Hello, it is Jack Gill and welcome to Anfield Agenda. This is our preview for tomorrow's game between England and the Czech Republic, sponsored, of course, by Boyle Sports, and I'm delighted to be joined today by Leon. First of all, we're just going to wrap up what happened against Scotland, and I think the best part of my Friday night, Leon, was the fact that I watched the whole game and I woke up Saturday morning not being able to remember the game.
Yeah, look, it was an unforgettable game from an English perspective. Scotland really, I think Steve Clarke made some good changes from that first 11 that he picked against the Czech Republic. He obviously learned from it. I thought Gilmour was outstanding in the middle of the park. He's got a big future, that kid. Always wants the ball, always looks as if he's trying to do something positively. Garrett's substitutions again kind of baffled me. He took off Phil Foden, brought on Grealish, instead of bringing on Grealish and taking off maybe one of the holding midfielders. Then he takes off Kane and brings on Rashford. Why not bring on Rashford to try and get in behind Kane and give Kane a bit of service? I know a lot of people are giving out about England's captain, but Jack, if you don't get any service, what can you do? So disappointing from an England perspective, and maybe now with the likes of Mason Mount and Ben Chilwell having to isolate, maybe there's going to have to be a change of tactic from Southgate, because Mount has played every game. They're up against a Czech side I think are not going to fear England at the moment. The Czechs have obviously got a better goal difference. They've scored 3. They've only conceded 1. England have obviously only scored 1, conceded none. So it's going to be an intriguing match.
Well, of course, it's all part of Gareth Southgate's master plan to not finish top of the group so that they avoid either France or Germany in the next round. But I do want to speak about Kane a bit more detail, Leon. You know, I think he's someone who's received quite a lot of stick after that Scotland game. You know, he's meant to be the golden boy of England. He's the captain, of course, but we've not really got to see his impact yet on this tournament after what was an outstanding World Cup from him. But I think you're quite right in what you said before about the service. He's not had enough service, and for me, watching England against Scotland the other day kind of reminded me of what we've seen from Liverpool for a lot of the season, where you know there's a lack of service. It's very one-dimensional at times, very boring, and England, if they're not careful and they don't sort it out quickly, are going to pay the price.
I think England, look, Harry Kane, in my opinion, is a world-class number 9, but he does need service and he does need help. And the way England are kind of set up at the moment, he's not getting that service. I mean, he's barely touching the football, and that's 2 games now in a row. So surely, if Gareth Southgate always wants to play him, and rightly so, you've got to try and get people in and around him who can make Kane effective. If you look at Harry Kane when he's really on top of his game at Spurs, him and Son link up extremely well. He also linked up quite well, not regularly with Gareth Bale, but on occasions. So the blueprint is there. You've just got to get players who can either get down the line and get balls into the box, or you've got to get people who can run behind Harry Kane. Let's not forget, Jack, Kane is a very good number 10 as well, and he can hit a pass. He can find a player who can make that run in behind the defender. So I hope from an England's perspective that Gareth is going to try something different against the Czechs, because if he goes with the same type of formation, the same style of play, we're just not going to see the best of Harry Kane. And I think it's a bit unfortunate for him. Yes, maybe he hasn't been at his electrifying best, but he's not getting any service whatsoever.
Do you find it a bit weird, Leon, that obviously prior to the tournament, obviously you look at this England squad, you see all the attacking talent. There were loads of questions about the amount of, you know, right backs they were taking, but it was the defence that you have to admit was the worry for England, especially with Maguire's injury. But during this tournament, I know we've only played Croatia and Scotland, but defensively, it has been, you know, defensively it's been quite strong. 2 clean sheets from 2 games, but it's been, you know, the attacking threat that England have been lacking.
Look, I suppose every good team, Jack, starts from the back. You don't want to be wide open, because when you get into the knockout stages, which I'm sure England will anyway, you want to start and have a solid defence. And England will be hard to break down. But my biggest problem is, can England go and win a game? And that's going to be the big question that I think most pundits and people who are watching the Euros are asking themselves at the moment. Yes, it's great. You've got 2 clean sheets. But I've also got to think, Jack, you've got to look at the opposition. And with all due respect to Croatia, they're not the same side as 2018. And with all due respect to Scotland, Scotland were a team against England. They really came together and they gave it absolutely everything they can. But they're not a France. They're not a Germany. They're not a Holland. They're not a Belgium. And these sides who I've just named there, they're going to pose England a lot more problems when they attack and go forward. But my big worry is, can England, should they go 1-0 down to one of these big sides, can they actually go then and score an equaliser? Or are they capable of going and winning a game from behind? And you'd have to say on the evidence so far, you wouldn't say they are. And Gareth is going to have to let the shackles off a little bit. Like, it's well and good being tight and being defensive and keeping clean sheets, but you've got to go and win games too. Now, maybe, look, there's a lot of people saying Gareth doesn't want to finish top of this group because of who we might play, but you're going to have to play them at some time anyway. And I think against the Czechs, England need a performance that gives them confidence before they go into the knockout stages. If it's another dour, maybe 1-0 victory or even a draw, does that give the squad and the camp the belief that they can go on and win this Euros? In my opinion, it's a no.
Don't forget, and I'm not comparing, but don't forget, obviously, the last European Championships we saw Portugal go on and win the whole tournament without winning, a game in the group, or even in the knockout stages, they didn't win a game inside 90 minutes. So, maybe Southgate believed that sorting the defence out and making sure that's tight is the winning formula. However, I completely agree, Leon. Scotland caused England a few problems as well, defensively, and England as a whole performed very poorly. And as you say, it's going to need to be a lot better against the Czech Republic. But let's talk through maybe some odds that you've got ahead of the Czech Republic game.
Yeah, I mean, I am a little bit surprised that the Czech Republic are such a big price, Jack. I mean, they're 13-2, which is 6.5 to 1. England, 8-15 favourites. I would have expected England to be favourites, but maybe not as short, and maybe the Czechs not as big. And the draw to me at the moment, if I'm looking at the kind of 3 options, just under 3 to 1 at 14-5. I just wonder, have England got it in them to actually go and want to win this match? Or will they be happy enough with a point? They're going to qualify because they'll obviously have 5 points. They won't win the group because the Czechs will finish ahead of them if it's a draw. And even if Croatia beat Scotland, or if Scotland beat Croatia, they'll still finish third in the group, no matter who wins that game. So maybe a draw is enough, and maybe Gareth is happy with a draw. I just think, if I was an English man and an English fan, I'd want to see a bit more from my side, especially with the talent that he has. I can't believe that Jadon Sancho hasn't even come on yet. I mean, he's had a pretty decent season in the Bundesliga. He can score, he can assist. Calvert-Lewin hasn't even seen a sniff yet either. The substitutions have been very negative. He's only used 2 of them, I think, in the 2 games. So he's not even using his full allocation, which surprises me as well. So I just hope there will be a little bit of a change. We've got that no-lose bet once again. And you know something, Jack? I'm going to stick with Harry Kane. I really do feel that all the outcry from the media, from the fans, people want to see him get a bit of service. So for me, 3 to 1 Harry Kane to finally get off the mark in this Euros. And don't be surprised either. If Kane gets his first goal, he could go on a bit of a run now. It just gives strikers feed off goals. Goals give them confidence. Harry Kane believes in himself. I've no doubt about that. But I just feel if he can score against the Czechs, I think that'll be a massive, massive bonus for England in the knockout stages. And I think it's up to Gareth Southgate to ensure that Kane gets the best possible opportunity to score. And that means he needs support. So for me, The £10 no-lose bet has got to be on Harry Kane once again to score first at 3-1.
And I think the interesting thing about Harry Kane, Leon, is it seems to be rinse and repeat with the English media. Every single, big competition for the national side, it's blame the striker. We've seen it a lot over the years with Wayne Rooney, and we're now getting it with Harry Kane. And it doesn't help that there's a lot of news surrounding him and his club future as well.
Yeah, look, I mean, there's rumours today that Man City have put in, £100 million bid for Harry Kane. But I think Kane, Jack, is such a professional. I mean, look at his career. Look at what he's done. I honestly don't believe that wherever he's going to play next season, that's next season. I think Harry Kane is such an ultimate pro. He loves representing his country. He's been a fantastic servant for club and country. And I know from even when you hear him talking about England, this is his dream, to be a part of a winning England side. So it's all there for England. I think they have the players. I just think the manager at the moment is the one who's letting them down a little bit. Yes, he's kept it tight at the back, as we've said, but now you've got to show that you're capable of winning a game. I think some of the bigger sides have shown in little bursts. The Italians have shown that they can win. Like, look at the difference between Italy and England. England, to me, look like Italy of old. Italy looked like England under maybe a Terry Venables, going and attacking, trying to win matches. Like, the Italians have won their first two games 3-0. But even at 2-0 up, they wanted that third goal. At 3-0 up, they wanted the fourth goal. I just don't see that urgency from the English players at the moment. And you can only kind of think that that's coming from Southgate and his staff. The players are playing to the manager's orders, like all players should, because you've got to take what your manager says and you've got to try and put it onto the pitch. So I hope, from an English perspective, unleash it, Gareth, a little bit. Let them go. Let them express themselves against the Czech Republic. I don't think the Czechs are going to fear England. And if the Czechs get the first goal, maybe the best thing to happen to England, Jack, could be going behind. Maybe then Southgate has to change it a bit. Because if they don't go behind and they keep getting clean sheets and maybe nicking 1-0s, well, then I suppose why would he change it? It's just disappointing watching it from a football fan's perspective.
And we've obviously, in the two previews we've done previously, Leon, we've both waxed lyrical about Jack Grealish, but in the two games so far, we've not seen the Brummie-born lads start, in either of them. And Gareth Southgate has faced quite a lot of criticism for that. But, maybe tomorrow with Mason Mount having to isolate. Now, look, I'm a big fan of Mason Mount too. Everyone who watches Anfield Agenda will obviously know that I'm a huge fan of Jack Grealish. And in the previous two shows that we've done together, we've both said how good we think he is as a player. But I think Mason Mount is also very, very good. And it surprises me that we've not seen them two together. But with no Mason Mount tomorrow, we have to see Grealish start.
You would imagine so. And okay, he didn't set the world alight when he came off the bench against Scotland, but Scotland done a job on him. They had nearly two players on him every single time. So he didn't have as much space. But I think when Jack Grealish starts, he becomes more involved in a game. Like, he's one of those players, Jack, that can grab a game by the scruff of the neck. I'd like to see Jack Grealish play just in behind Harry Kane. That's where I would like to see him. I'd like to see two wide men attack the fullbacks, get beyond them, and get balls into the box. Jack can also pick a pass between a centre-half and a fullback if you've got that pace on the wings. And England do have that pace. They have that pace in abundance. You've got Rashford, you've got Foden, you've got Sancho. The players are there to actually get in behind. So let's see Southgate use what he has at his disposal. I'm not saying go gung-ho. You don't need to go gung-ho. You've still got Declan Rice. I still wonder, do you honestly need the two of them, Jack, Rice and Phillips, every game? I just don't know whether you do. And I think if you make the bold decision and maybe leave one of them out, it just gives you a bit more going forward. And I think that's what England are missing. They're still going to be quite solid at the back. Because Rice, he won't go too far forward. He'll give the centre-backs protection, and even the full-backs, they get back quite quickly. So I just want to see a bit more creativity from England, because I do believe they have the talent within this squad to go an awful long way in this competition.
I think it was difficult for Southgate, to be fair, against Scotland, because I think he was in a situation where, you know, Calvin Phillips, for his performance against Croatia, made him undroppable, really. And you know, I think Scotland was probably the game where you would look to replace Calvin Phillips for maybe that Jack Grealish and go that bit more attacking. But because of Calvin Phillips' performance, because of how well it worked, I think Southgate gave him the nod again. And, you know, I think now he'll probably regret that. But at the same time, as I said before, you just couldn't drop Calvin Phillips, could you?
No, and I agree wholeheartedly with that, Jack. But I think when the change was being made for Grealish, that was the time to pull one of the holding midfielders, because nothing was happening. He definitely deserved his starting place against Scotland on the first game performance. For me, he was man of the match against Croatia. Phillips was. He was sensational in that game. So if he had been dropped, that would have been a travesty. But when it wasn't working, and when you weren't able to break Scotland down, that's when Southgate needed to make the call, get rid of a defensive midfielder and bring on Grealish. Leave Phil Foden on, because even if he wasn't having his best game, he's a player who possesses a moment of brilliance, a moment of magic that can turn a game on its head. That's where I think Southgate let the English players and the English fans down. With the substitution, it was like for like, but he kept the two holding midfielders on. That was Southgate's mistake, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I'm sure a lot of people will see, well, will hope for changes in that England side tomorrow. Obviously, if Mason Mount and Ben Chilwell definitely do have to isolate, then we will certainly see at least one change. Another thing we have to talk about, Leon, quickly before we finish is, you know, Henderson and Maguire. Now, Maguire, prior to Scotland, declared himself fit. He is England's best centre-back. You know, he's the most expensive centre-back in the world as well. We saw him not played against Scotland. England have 2 clean sheets. Will Southgate go with that centre-back pairing again, or do you think now's the time to bring Maguire in?
Well, I mean, that's a tough call, because I think Mings has done well, and a lot of people maybe questioned him when he got the nod for the Croatia game, but he stood up to every challenge that was thrown at him. He didn't do much wrong against Scotland either. But I think, unfortunately for him, when Harry Maguire is fully fit, which I think he probably is now, I think Harry Maguire comes back into the side. And it's no kind of disrespect on Tyrone Mings, but I think Stones and Maguire are just ahead of him. But the one thing that Mings has done, he's proved to Gareth Southgate that if either of them get injured or drop a bit in form, he can slot right back in. So I think if Harry Maguire is fully fit, I think he will start against Croatia. And I think it's important for Maguire to get game time before the last 16. I think the worst thing you'd want to do, Jack, is to try and put him right into the last 16. It just, everything ramps up a notch. When you go into the knockout stages of any competition, the standard and the pace just goes up that little bit. So I think for Harry Maguire, he'll want minutes under his belt before he goes in and plays that last 16 game. So for me, if he's fully fit, I think he starts.
And before we go, Leon, a score prediction from you?
Well, I'm going to go for a draw, and I'm going to go for 1-1, because unfortunately, I just don't think Gareth is going to change it too much. I hope he gets a bit more in around Harry Kane. And even if it was a penalty for Kane to score, it's just for him to get off the mark. And that will just take away that kind of pressure, maybe that he's feeling that he hasn't scored yet in the first 2 games, that he's been taken off in the first 2 games. So I think he just wants to get a goal. So Harry Kane to score first, but I'm going to go for a 1-1 scoreline.
I'm going to go for 2-1. I was tempted to go 1-1, but because you said it swayed me to go 2-1. I think the Czech Republic will score first, though, and obviously it'll be the first goal that England have conceded in this tournament. Thank you very much to all you lovely lot who tuned in to watch this. Remember, Boyle Sports are offering a £10 no-lose bet on all England games throughout this tournament. Now, if England carry on playing how they will, that won't be for very much longer, will it, Leon? But there we go. Make sure you use it wisely. Leon's obviously told us in the past that with that bet, make sure you don't go too safe with it. If you lose, you get your money back. So there is no point in going too safe. Thank you very much for joining us, and hopefully we shall see you all again soon after an England win tomorrow. Cheers. Ta-ra.